Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. Today, we sit down with Sara Fralich, the CEO of Design Research Collective and one of our new Jewfolk board members. Sara and I talk about being flaming extroverts, Buddhism, and how we explore Judaism in this week's Who the Folk podcast.
Well, Sara Fralich, welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. Thanks for welcoming us into your home here in St. Paul.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you are, first and foremost, you are one of our new board members to the Jewfolk Board. So we are getting, as we're ramping up this year, we are welcoming you and thank you for joining us. We are looking forward to your input and experiences and helping us grow. But on your work side, you started your own company was it a couple years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell us about the Design Research Collective. What do you do?
So I'm an anthropologist by training, and basically I love watching, talking, interacting with people, and kind of studying them in the larger context of society and culture. And so we get hired for different companies and corporations in town, mostly, to help them understand their customer. So what are, let's say, Target or Best Buy, their customers' articulated needs, but also their unarticulated needs? So what are things going on in people's lives that are difficult or frustrating that a brand or company can help them solve? So we do both research and design. My business partner is a designer.
Okay.
And my side of the street is helping with the insights and understanding the customer. And my partner's side of the street is more developing either marketing, product, or strategy based on what we learn about the customer to deliver to our clients.
So is the products that you've helped them design, are those like secret? Can you give us an example?
Let's see. They range, this is pretty funny. They range from paper plates to, deep vein thrombosis treatment.
Whoa.
That's like a full medical procedure. So we've developed a framework of innovation that goes from insights to innovation that can be applied to both paper plates all the way to a sophisticated medical device. And the idea is that if you do deep insights and you understand your customer or your user really well, then you can develop incredibly successful products and solutions for that customer. And so our process goes from research to design, insights to the actual innovation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how did you get interested in the anthropology side, the studying people? Where did that come from?
I guess if you knew me outside of this, I always tell my kids they want to know what I do for a living, and they say she talks to strangers. So I've always...
That's funny. My kids might say I do that too.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by strangers. Sitting next to somebody on a train, or I would love to know their life story, and it's always been easy to get there with people. And I think I'm authentically curious about people's lives, and not only what they do, but why they do things, and what makes up why they do things. So that's how I think I got interested in anthropology. And what's really neat is we apply it to a business context. So at one point it was like, I'm going to fly to some exotic continent and study groups of people and save the world.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's sustainable to help live a life in American society today and have 2 kids and send them to school in Hebrew school. So applying that in a business context is where I'm at. So studying people and what makes them do what they do and why.
That's fascinating. So I have to imagine you're not an introvert.
No, flaming extrovert. Which is funny because my husband's a flaming introvert.
Okay, you mentioned your husband, and I was going to let you plug his band later, but I got to ask, he's the frontman of a band, the Big Woo.
Yeah.
How are you an introvert and do that on stage in front of people all the time?
Yeah. It's pretty hysterical. We, have family events or get together with friends, and everyone would love to hear him play guitar and sing and just be the, busking on the street. He will never do that. He can barely play a song for our kids, but stand him on a stage in front of hundreds, thousands of people, and he's figured out a way to do it. We'll have to ask him, but it's remarkable. And I think some of the most talented artists and performers, if you will, often tend to be introverts. In fact, his parents were both performers.
Okay.
And one of them was an extrovert and one was still an introvert. So
all right.
he comes from a long line. And my kids are both more on the introverted spectrum.
Okay.
So I'm expecting them to be on stage performing for thousands of people. We'll see.
So what led you to want to start your own company as you have from sort of the corporate American life you were leading before?
That's a really good question. I'm crazy. Like,
Okay.
you have to be, I tell people who start their own thing, you have to be like this much crazy. Like, it's not a normal thing to do. There's not a lot of security. You have to be willing and excited to take risks because it's nuts.
Yeah.
To go from a corporate job. I worked at Target for a long time, and then I worked at 3M for a fleeting 3 months. That's a whole nother story. But I just had this kind of spark that I had to do it. The second reason, which I think is more interesting and kind of speaks to society and modern culture, to be honest, the people I was working with at a certain headquarters that had red circles involved in it, their kids were in daycare 11 hours a day. And that means dropping them off at 7 and picking them up at 6. And I don't judge that, and that works really well for a lot of families. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of the culture that I was immersed in. And I missed my kids. If I could barely get there at 8, let's be honest. I was most often there at 9. But then to be at the office and sometimes waste time in meetings and happy hours, and I needed to take back my family life. I needed to be able to see my kids when they came home. And so a lot of it had to do with being present for my kids and being more engaged in our home. And when you work in a corporate job, it's really easy to get caught up. And, I would barely see them. And when I did, I was so focused on my corporate job and how serious and important I thought it was that I missed out.
Yeah.
And that's just for me. But this 11 hours in daycare a day and really struck me as, is this worth it? So I may not have as much money and security, but I do feel that I have more time and that I have more presence of mind with my family and kids.
Probably slightly more sanity too.
Yeah,
or
but
not.
having your own business, it's a different insanity.
Okay.
But at least I'm kind of more in control of the sanity. My dad was an entrepreneur, and actually my grandparents on both sides were bubbies in the 80s. So I think it's kind of in my nature to be like, wait a second, I could be my own boss. That would be all right.
And I think it's interesting the point you made about sort of the family time, and trying to make that time of it happen when you're in a corporate world. It sounds like, to me at least, so many corporations talk about the
work-life balance,
but did you find it was maybe a little more talk and not enough action?
Yeah, and for some people that's really fulfilling, and at times in my life it was really fulfilling. But I think in my early 30s, I went through this really big existential crisis of, gosh, I'm really chasing a lot in this corporate world, and there's more, and I'm chasing a future, and there's more here in this present, like my kids and family, that I can have easier access to if I'm not in the 8 to 5 grind. But I do know corporations, what's interesting is there's been some studies that say like folks that have gone down to a 30-hour work week or even less are just as productive. It was never that, I get the same amount of work done by starting at 9:30 and be, trying to finish up by 2:30. I'm just really efficient.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you're in an office with lots of other people who maybe don't have kids or don't have a yoga class they want to go to or whatever, they're not as efficient. So kind of brings down the other thing is I was looking for a little more soul, if I'm going to be honest. I love, shopping like any other gal, but I was looking for a little more soul and meaning, and I'm still looking for that, but I thought maybe getting out of the corporate world might help.
I think that's something that more and more people look for also, is they look for, like, they want their job to have meaning too.
Yeah. So we have this goal, that especially this year, is to do more work for nonprofits.
Oh, that's cool.
Probably hence why I'm joining this board, is that it's part of our goal. And it's one thing to hawk paper plates and t-shirts.
Yeah.
Mattress pads, cat litter boxes, all projects I've worked on. It's another thing to be involved in life-saving medical devices. And so getting to work with some of the bigger med device companies in town has been in that added soul that I might have been looking for when I was in the retail, consumer packaged goods space.
Well, there's no shortage of medical device companies in town, which helps if that's what you want to look for.
I don't know what I want to do when I grow up still, though. We'll see.
I say that all the time, despite the gray hairs that may suggest I'm grown up. I'm with you, though. I wonder that a lot. Not that I don't love what I do here, but, it's hard.
Yeah.
When you have kids saying, when I grow up, I want to do this. I'm like, you don't know what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you do. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a journalist when I was 6.
You did?
I did. But, they don't, they feel this pressure to choose something. You don't choose anything, you're 9.
I was really serious about going to rabbinical school, and I visited some.
Really?
It's just crazy to see where the trajectory has taken me of my life. Yeah.
So
and who knows? That spark is still in there somewhere of like spiritual leadership.
Which synagogue did you grow up in? And you grew up in the Twin Cities?
I certainly did.
Okay.
I probably went to camp with everybody listening.
Excellent.
Herzl and Ramah. Grew up at B'nai Emet, which is now defunct, which
now part of it, now Adath.
Oh, it is? Okay, yeah.
Rolled in there.
And both my parents' families were really vested and integrated in my dad, B'nai Emet, my mom, Bethel. And so we moved to Bethel and really rooted there. My aunt was just the president, and man, super deep roots at Bethel Synagogue for my family. And now my sister and I chose to raise our families, which are interfaith, at Shir Tikva, to just kind of find more people that maybe aligned with our values and maybe whose lifestyles we could relate to more. And we're kind of straddling both Bethel and Shir Tikva, trying to figure that out.
So values Judaic, values global, values social, which...
Yeah, I think all of those. Honestly, if it's also very spiritual. I think sometimes when I go to synagogue, I love the rituals and I love the Hebrew and the prayers, but I also have this like modern kind of critic inside that is like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
We are following a Torah around. This is bizarre, but fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for, and I love the ritual, and I hope I don't come across as awful, but I was looking for spirituality that maybe could connect more with my sensibility and rational side.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm still looking. My husband is a Buddhist.
What does he think of the synagogue experience?
Oh, he loves it. I mean,
okay.
he feels, and he loves that we're Jewish. I would say our family is Jewish.
Okay.
And I would say I'm part Buddhist too,
Okay.
in many ways. And I think you can be both.
I think so.
It's amazing how many of the American Buddhist leaders grew up Jewish.
Really?
Incredibly. Incredible. There's a book called The Jew and the Lotus that, has some references to it. But some of the most popular American Buddhist teachers grew up Jewish.
Really?
Yeah. For those that are listening and care, like John Kabat-Zinn, I believe, Sharon Salzberg. I've been really into Tara Brach, Brach. And so we talked about earlier listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
I listened to some of these Dharma talks.
Okay.
From some of these folks that grew up Jewish, and there's kind of this, like, they sound familiar, even though they're talking about Buddhism.
It's interesting, and it's funny because people are going to hear this and think, "Oh, interfaith family," but
We're super interfaith.
Well, yes, but I think when you hear interfaith family, you typically think Jewish and something of the, from the Christianity.
Totally, and he
strain.
didn't grow up Buddhist. Like, let's
Okay.
be honest, we just had Christmas at Grandma's. It was
Okay.
delightful.
But again, I mean, how his religion and how you
I don't
guys are
think he
raising.
calls it a religion either. He would call
Is it a
like
faith?
a philosophy or
Oh,
kind
okay.
of a way of being. And like I said, I feel very much closer to Buddhism from a spiritual point of view than I do Judaism. But I'm
Okay.
so culturally in love with Judaism and Jewish stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm on this board. Anyone that knows me knows I'm totally in love with being Jewish and things that are Jewish.
All right. Well, then the last two questions we always end with: favorite Jewish holiday.
Oh, gosh. All right. Certainly, it has to be Passover. And the reason why is every year at the Seder.
Yeah.
I often help lead it. But our favorite song is Miriam the Prophet by Debbie Friedman.
Oh, sure.
And so our family is kind of wild and wacky. And we lead like a huge song and dance number singing Miriam. And everyone gets tambourines
Yeah.
and drums and starts dancing around the house when we start singing that song. And it's just this fabulous display of feminist kind of appreciation for the feminine
Yeah.
and the celebration of the Jews being freed from slavery. And Debbie Friedman's song just like brings that all to life, and
Yeah.
all of us love singing it together.
Her songs have a tendency
Oh,
to
I
do
know,
that.
totally.
So, all right, and favorite Jewish food.
Oh man. Okay, I'm the high maintenance gluten-free girl,
Okay.
which is a sad, sad day. I've been gluten-free for probably 10 years, so I haven't had a legit bagel or a legit arugula since then, except when I was in labor with my son. So when I was in labor with my son, I was like, I'm gonna eat a bagel, and it's gonna be awesome, and it was.
Was it?
Can you think of a Jewish food that doesn't have gluten and
No,
carbs
it's-
all over it? It's impossible.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Knishes, man, those were good. It's all nostalgia right now. So if I had to make a food gluten-free, it would probably be knishes. Potato knishes.
All right. Those are good.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's okay.
You can do gluten-free noodles and do a kugel.
It's just not the
it's
same.
not the same though.
No. I know. There's nothing Jewish that you can eat gluten-free. It's like an oxymoron because my digestive system is also very Jewish.
Well, I mean, there are, certainly, gluten-free versions of
Yes.
challah and
Yeah.
stuff. It's
Yeah.
I get it. It's not the same though.
Yeah. But a good, like, flaky potato knish, if I could eat one of those again, I would.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sara Fralich, thank you very much for joining us this week and welcoming us into your home. And thanks for being on the board at Jewfolk. We look forward to seeing you around more.
Yeah, happy. I'm excited to do it.
Thanks again to Sara for coming on the show this week. If you want to read highlights of this episode, you can do so on Monday morning when the article drops. If you like to listen and haven't yet subscribed, rated, or reviewed the podcast, please do so. You can find us on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.